Welcome to If Prices Could Talk, the podcast where we dive into the art and science of pricing, sales, and negotiation. I'm your host, Tracy Dent. Join me as we explore strategies and current events shaping the future of pricing power in B2B, featuring insights from industry leaders and subject matter experts. Let's jump into today's conversation. Josh, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on. So Josh, we've got Josh today. Josh is the Senior Director of Price Setting and Analytics at Genuine Parts Company. From Holden Advisors, we've got Jeet Mukherjee and Pete Morelli. They're both partners at the firm. And today we're going to talk a lot about, I almost said the pricing journey again. And then I have yet to figure out how to rebrand this term for people who are like in the long evolution of, kind of like advancing their maturity in pricing. So maybe that's something we can solve today. Like, what do we call this? Because it sounds so intense and like no ending kind of thing. And I feel like in what you've been doing, Josh, there's got to be so many places where you've seen wins and results along the way and kind of like conquests. Not even like Everest is, it is a journey, but like you get somewhere. And so I think it'll just be interesting to kind of pick that apart because there's been so many things inside of that we could talk about, and we'll just figure out what are we going to call this thing,
Well, I think one thing we could talk about is fall summits. That's something when you think about hiking, and I'd say there's a lot of correlation to a pricing journey and thinking you're at the summit, and then you come over and you're like, oh, we still have work to do. There's always work to be done.
Yeah.
How about the pricing maturity curve? PMC.
What's the backside? But if it's a curve, what's on the downside of it?
Trademark it quick.
Yeah, PMC. I even asked GPT right before this. I was like, how do we talk about a multi-year thing? And it was like the pricing evolution. It's the same problem, which is it just seems like all work and no payoff. So anyway, I think it'll be good to talk about like what are some of the so many learnings I would imagine just as you've worked with Pricefx, as you've worked through all of the intense alignment internally to make progress in all the ways that you have. So let's start. Can you just tell us, or for people listening, talk about what Genuine Parts Company does and what your role is there?
Yeah, so Genuine Parts Company, we're a global business that primarily deals in the automotive aftermarket and industrial space. So we have a few large subsidiaries, including NAPA Auto Parts, which is where I'm dedicated to. And then the second largest is Motion Industries, which is more on the industrial side. So we're a heavy distribution company, have been for a long time. On the NAPA side, we have around 6,000 stores nationwide. About 2/3 of those are independently owned. And then we primarily look after, on my team, our list price management. So that's our list price to our B2C customer, our retail price, to our B2B customer, our wholesale price, and then our resale price into our independently owned NAPA Auto Parts stores. We have somewhere around 850,000 SKUs in our assortment. And depending on how you look at our customer accounts, at a company-owned stores, we have around 200,000 customers, but network-wide can be as much as like 2 million, just depending on your timeline of trying to identify that. So a lot of complexities from a pricing standpoint when we think of, we have to make money. We look at our distribution centers and they're selling into independent owners, so they've got a profit component to them. And then obviously our stores, both on our company-owned stores and our independent, they have profit expectations to make sure that they can grow successfully in market. So we're always trying to balance that. And that's definitely makes our business a little unique from our competition. There's some things that an independent owner can do, though, to strengthen the relationship beyond what a corporation can do. So over time, it's allowed us to grow in footprint across the country and kind of just be one of those top competitors in the automotive aftermarket.
Maybe a starting point is, how do you know when you're ready to work with pricing software?
Yeah, Tracy, I was going to say the same thing. And Josh, maybe another way to think about the same question is, I think you've had a long tenure with the organization. And at some point you were pre-price optimization software in a place where you probably had teams or a number of different balls in the air to manage that large number of SKUs. So what was kind of the status quo and led you to the impetus of what Tracy just said?
Yeah, I think status quo for us was we were heavy Excel users, still are. I don't think you get away from using Excel for doing some analysis, but at some point you keep on trying to add more to your model in Excel, and then you eventually want to start trying to optimize things, and you want to start doing regression analysis or get a little more data science heavy in your approach, and you kind of start hitting the ends of what you can do there. And then at the same time, I think you've got to figure out how to meet your team. So, you've got a team that's used to using Excel. So you need a tool that can offer some transparency, can distill what could be a rather complicated data science approach into something that's digestible. And so that's another reason why you kind of look at pricing software. I know a lot of corporations have looked at all the tariff noise and, going through tariffs a number of years ago, like that caused a very, very complicated situation for us to manage, just how timely you can make price adjustments. How quickly can you spin up analysis to decide how to move price? So I know a lot of organizations have looked at just how quickly they need to be able to adjust pricing as another justification for bringing online pricing software. For me, there's some benefits I didn't quite realize until we adopted pricing software, which was standardization of approach. So, if you have a lot of Excel users and everybody's just building their own formulas and trying to tackle the problem with whatever skill set they have available to them, you end up driving a lot of good ideas, right? But they might not all be converging in kind of one direction. So for us, driving, more standardization through pricing software has been good. It's been good. We're pulling in one direction. We're able to align a little bit better to our category strategy. So I'd say we've grown in maturity and how we manage products just at a high level and our merchandising function. That also put the need to, mature our pricing function. We also had, just being transparent here, we had an analysis done by a third-party consultant of basically, hey, where can you put the investment dollars to generate the highest ROI? And pricing came out on top. So you'll see that, I think, from a lot of publications kind of mention similar things, right? If you're going to invest $1 in an organization and you have a pricing practice that isn't super modern, it's one of the best ways that you can drive an ROI.
How was the ROI described for you guys or defined for you guys? Was it through price management and control of leakage? Was it through sort of better, more precise pricing, so your margins are going to be higher or more balanced throughout your portfolio? How was it sort of defined?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as it's trying to extract more value across. If you think of where we were in our maturity, going from kind of cost plus to market based with an eye on some value based pricing, we definitely were nowhere close to value based pricing. I'd say we're on that journey still today. We basically signed up for a pricing transformation that took us 3 years and had a financial target tied to it each year for an ROI based on the investment that we were anticipating we would take on during that year.
So you guys were you had a 3-year horizon, and then in that 3 years, did you test out or did you pilot multiple tools, or did you just demo and decide to go with Pricefx?
Yeah, we went through a whole down selection process that took us better part of 6 months. So we started with about 7 different software vendors, all the big names in the space that have a history of supporting distribution type organizations and the complexities that come with it. And eventually through that down selection process, with our business model and honestly just some of the, we serve a lot of customer segments. We serve a lot of customers. We have our independent owners. You can think of them as a customer. We have B2B, B2C. So it became obvious that just based on the complexities, we needed to have a solution that could be configured to some of our use cases. And that's where Pricefx shines, right? They're a highly configured solution. So that was, I would say, one of the primary reasons that we ended up going with Pricefx.
In my past career, we kind of went through a selection process and we did a bake-off. We did an actual pilot with multiple of these pricing software. And then we chose the one that was applicable. Like you said, they're all good in their own ways. And we just chose the one that was best fit for our environment for that time. So before we got to why you chose Pricefx, what were sort of the bottom 2 or 3 that you guys were kind of, you down selected your way down to? And then did you an actual pilot, or did you just say, hey, I reviewed the products and I'm going to go ahead and make a decision?
No, I mean, our process took a while because we didn't do a true pilot as much as we did what we called a POC. So we did hand over our data on a limited subset just to see like how would you handle how we go about customer discounting and customer segmentation in your solution. How would you go about list price optimization in your solution? So that's basically kind of how we went through our POC, and that was between pros and Pricefx. Really, I mean, in both solutions, I mean, I wouldn't say anything negative about almost any of the software solutions. It just matters, you know, when you line up all your use cases, what comes out on top. But no, it was definitely, we did our due diligence. That was heavy workload over the course of that 6 months. We went through kind of a 3-round selection process. And so out of round 2, we had about 4 vendors, and then we narrowed it down to the top 2. And then we decided, hey, they're really close. They're neck and neck. Let's strive to a POC. And even after that, I'll be honest, like it was a very, very tight decision. And it took almost like 3 to 4 weeks after that to still make a balanced decision.
And then, of course, you kind of describe why you chose Pricefx. Now, from the time you chose the solution that you wanted, how long did it take you for the implementation piece of it?
Yeah, obviously we went through and said, hey, we want Pricefx, and then you've got to work on the SOWs and make sure that everything aligns. So that was a few more months past our like, hey, we want to award this business. Took us a few more months to actually award the business, get the SOW signed, get our SI partner identified to help support the integration efforts. And then we began. And then once we began, it was like May, and we were able to go live the following January. And we could have gone live in December. We pushed into January just because we go through an internal audit process through third party every year, or external audit process. And basically the consensus was, hey, if you guys don't see any real need to go live right now, let's push it until next year so we can do the due diligence side of where this belongs in our auditing process.
Yeah, end of year is tough year to go on stuff. By the way, who was your SI partner that you chose?
We were partnered with Experis still.
Experis.
Yep.
Shout out to them. So that's awesome.
Shout out to Tim at Experis. Yep.
Did you by a chance test out other SI partners before choosing them, or did you just go with them?
So our journey for SI selection was kind of open it up to all the big boys in the software integration space. Out of that, found just like limited experience with actually integrating Pricefx. So really good at integrations and road mapping in general. You know, high aptitude for change management at those institutions, but lacked familiarity with the platform itself. So that's when we pivoted in our approach to SI down selection and found a few more boutique, I would say, SI companies that are more dedicated to Pricefx implementations. And then we kind of went through 2 of those, settled on Experis because they could support us. They were willing to support us a little bit more locally instead of be completely offshore. So that was a big deciding factor for us.
Got it. That makes sense. And then there's always this chicken or the egg when it comes to pricing strategy and then pricing implementation or management of prices and price models and the implementation of it, right? And for us, we think that strategy should come first, and your processes have to be sort of aligned with what your strategy is and how you want to move in the market, and then you can bring in a tool to expedite the process of implementation and to manage complexity and scale, basically. That's kind of at a high level. That's our sort of approach. How was your approach relative to pricing strategy? And the reason I'm asking, by the way, is because we often see clients go down this software path where they haven't thought about strategy, where they expect the tool to handle complexity and corner cases. And then they start building sort of these, processes on top of processes to handle corner cases. And the tool is not as effective because you're customizing the tool way too much for these corner cases, and you take some of the power out of it. Because you're missing that strategy layer that's going to help you say, hey, this is the 80% or 90% you should really drive towards. Don't worry about the other 10, 20. How did you kind of manage that sort of trade-off as you went into implementation?
What you described, I would definitely call as ideal scenario. Now, the realities of our business didn't necessarily lend themselves 100% to that journey. So we did have a third-party strategy consultant come in do some prep work. It was, I would still say, very much in the vein of do what you're doing today. Here is what you should be focused on as you look towards the future. Build in the flexibility that you'll be able to grow there, because you know, like back to the idea of most organizations probably have an idea that there's this buzzword of value-based pricing out there, and you know, that sounds great. Let's go figure out how to match every customer's expectation through price, and then figure out exactly how much or little of the value we want to leave back on the table. That's not realistic in a business like ours, to just say I can do that in a year, right? So you've got to put a lot of things on a roadmap of, okay, I know some things about what our customers want, how they drive value from our services and products. That might be a multi-year journey, though. I might have to set things on roadmap for integration and enrichment that might be a few years. So there's also the meet the needs of the business right now. And I'd say that's where we're like, okay, if we get what we're doing, we really do focus mainly on that core. Not to say we don't have edge use cases integrated, because we do for sure, but we do focus on like, how do we use what we have today, which is a little bit rules-based in approach. Some things are optimized, and keep on expanding on that so that we keep on trying to figure out a way to balance where optimized price could come into play for more parts of the decision, and slowly expand those rules out so that it gives it a little bit more room to breathe over time. And that's kind of what we're doing, is trying to use more of our business rules as floors and ceilings, allow optimized price to drop in between. But I would say a lot of it is still formulaic. You know, today a lot of our decisions are kind of if this, then do this. But we do have an eye of like, how do we start creating that range? How do we start integrating more value-based pricing and optimized pricing in between? So it's building that roadmap for us is what we've been really focused on. And it's not the clearest vision, because you don't know what you're going to find on the other side. You know, we can't test everything, and we don't have data to test it today. So we know we want to be able to do some of that in the future. So it's more about establishing the framework to grow long term.
Josh, one thing I hear you saying just about in terms of maybe a rationale for why you move first, or kind of in parallel paths with the implementation versus kind of full strategy. I mean, externally, it sounds like you had an assessment done. You see there's opportunity. Internally, from your sort of direction strategically with the team, there's different approaches that different folks using Excel are going to use. What about your day-to-day quality of life and how you're spending time? Because I imagine when folks are doing their individual queries, filtering, and maybe different ways, you have to do a lot of oversight and checking on like, are we even working from the right fact base? And so just a lot of your day-to-day probably is on sort of that tactical component. And now that's probably off the table. So to use your term, you've probably got more room to breathe and almost think more strategically, or make sure like the approach is solid. And now we can really think about, all right, from our perspective, like the 20/80, we might spend 80% of our time working with a new client to get the data right. And then we've got like the last 20% to do smart analytics, but you've sort of taken that part off the table. So you can probably focus a little different.
I would echo that for sure. It's the ones after we went live, it was the review process of pricing decisions was so much faster for me, because I could see the applied strategies to drive the price. I could look at the calculation to figure out exactly if I wanted to get that granular at a SKU level to do that kind of analysis. I could just look for outliers way easier. You're just sorting across it, trying to figure out exactly what they had done. For me, that did free up some time into, hey, let's focus a lot on our roadmap and where we're trying to drive long term. I wanted to see I have free time, but still a heavy part of my job is focused on the future. I'd say about 25 to 50%, depending on the week, might be related to IT integration efforts. Trying to work cross-functionally with different teams on, we need new enrichment of a certain variable to build into our either product or customer segmentation framework. So yeah, it definitely changes what you can do, but I think it definitely speeds up the review of any pricing decision. And it just helps training too. You can train the team a lot easier when you understand exactly how they drove the outcome, and then it's just, I would have approached it this direction, or did you consider this? So it's been helpful in that regard for sure.
Yeah, especially given the team size and subsidiaries, like all the different parts of your organization. It's not like you had like two people on the team that just were great at Excel and you had a level set. You kind of get a lot of, I imagine, some turnover and a growing team, et cetera.
My side of the org is about 13 individuals. About 7 of those are dedicated to just list price management. And then we've got others dedicated to analytics and what we call pricing architecture, which is some of it is more data science approach. So how do we want to organize our products, thinking with how do we want to really drive strategy long term?
I know from my journey in my previous career, we had to change the skill sets that were on the team. So because we were getting a sharper tool coming into our environment, we needed to kind of change some of the, or add to the team and change and upskill some of the folks that we had. Did you have to relook at your organization or your team, or even broadly, not just you specifically, but the NAPA team holistically? Were there some tweaks or changes that you needed to make capability wise?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. So about a very similar timeline, we moved to cloud-based data storage. We started doing more query work. We were using Click as our BI tool. We brought online Power BI. So like we've been like just maturing in general in the tech space, and that's a different skill set from where we were, which was a little bit more price administrative function, like see cost increase, give price increase. So that has required us to kind of rethink our structure and how we ignite the tool. And so we've upskilled the team. We've done quite a bit of training, obviously on the tool itself, but also on just kind of the other ways that we can run analysis. We also just kind of rescoped roles, frankly. Like we were a little bit more analyst led. Now we're more manager focused, category manager aligned to pricing manager, so that we have kind of that higher level skill set in the organization to make pricing decisions. A little bit more strategic focus definitely is kind of the goal of what we've looked for in those roles is strategy drivers to align to like what category strategy, what their goals are. So it's definitely been a journey. We've been on that journey for probably a year and a half as we've been kind of trying to mold the team into kind of a high performing pricing organization.
Really cool.
That's great. From a tool perspective, does your tool go out to the sales organization? Does your sales team have transparency and visibility to how a price is generated, built, the levels of concession? Do they log into the tool itself? And was there training and capability building you had to do around that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting part of our business is we centralized what I'll call pricing power almost a decade ago. So we took that out of the seller's hands almost a decade ago. So now the seller in our organization is more to let us know that we have a pricing problem, and then they kick it over the fence to us, and we do the analysis and decide whether or not we agree to apply an extra discount. So we don't use like a CPQ. A lot of our business we would call non-negotiated, meaning we just have to be relevant to the market. And, a lot of our customers, they buy a large breadth of products and it's all year, make, model specific. So it's not like, hey, I see this product 100 times in a year and I have a reference price in mind of what this should cost. And I need to go work with my salesperson to make sure I'm getting the right price on this product. So it's very different from a lot of distribution companies where they have more of a seller-led, like sellers have a lot of pricing power. Ours is the opposite. We've almost consolidated all of that to a headquarters function, and we just receive the request. We do the analysis, make the decision. We do approve a lot, especially on like new customers. We want to make sure that we're winning business right out the gate. So we do a good job of trying to be really quick to react to those. Is kind of how we go to market. There's been thoughts of, sales org obviously would like to see and have a little bit more steering power in that. So there's thoughts of, do we come out with more of a floor target ceiling approach to how we display prices? And we've also started to think of how do we drive more confidence in that our pricing decision is the right decision for that customer? So we're working on that for both our company-owned stores and our independent stores. But it's a journey. That's a journey for sure, because it's, we're trying to strike that balance of transparency without really telling them exactly how everything is decided at headquarters, but give them confidence that we're making the best decision we can with the tools and the data available to us.
For your company-owned stores, specifically, because you probably have better visibility to the data, do you have lost data from them that you use in your price calculations?
Yeah, we have some lost data. That actually doesn't come, like, it's more of we typically think of our customer value proposition this way. Availability is king. So you have to have the product first. The service is second, price is third. So the technical definition of our lost sales data is typically related to availability. So we didn't make the sale because we didn't have it on the shelf. We do have a secondary process though, where the field can push a price opportunity, we call them, to headquarters and give us basically here's the price that I was charged, here is your competitor's price. And then we kind of look at those in aggregate to decide whether or not we have an issue. We don't want to overemphasize any one price complaint. And there's a lot of competitors in the space doing a lot of different things from a pricing standpoint, but we try to look at those more in aggregate.
Can you tell us about some of the early big wins, times where you kind of got somewhere and you were like, wow, this is progress? Do you remember moments like that from the early days?
Yeah, I mean, we went live 13 months ago with Pricefx. So right out the gate, I mean, I would say T-1 month. So actually a month before that, a big win was just when we were going through some training and UAT and you saw the lights turn on for the team. I would say that was probably the first big win is, wow, they get it. They're understanding it. Like we've built a solution that meets the needs of our team. The change management piece maybe won't be as heavy as we had initially thought. So I think that was probably one of the first wins, was just watching kind of the user adoption of that. Now, as we grew the solution, initially we were still modifying prices about 50% outside the solution. And then we figured out a few additional strategies to integrate, and all of a sudden our usage rate went through the roof. Basically we were able to do everything in the platform that we were doing outside. So that was just a huge win too of, okay, now we've got everything getting, a proper impact calculated, driving a proper workflow process. That was a huge win just for us to say, hey, it's all doing it. Everything's in the solution. We're able to manage basically any product decision we want to. We can manage inside the solution.
What was the time frame, Josh, from making that signature to buy to the point where you're like, man, we're now rocking and rolling using the solution, and most of our business calculations are happening within the platform?
I would say 12 to 15 months.
That's pretty good. That's really good.
Somewhere in there where it was like, yeah, we're doing that now. This is all on the list price management side. We're still rolling out kind of our customer discounting optimization. But on the list price management side, it was probably 12 to 15 months to get it to a level that we felt like we're making good decisions. I think right now where we're at is we're trying to figure out, as we try to put together a 3-year roadmap, it's when do you try to pause and just get really mature at the level that you've integrated? Like that's a decision point for us that we're about to have to make here in the next few months. Is like, at some point you need a stable environment for the team. They can't keep on having to learn new capabilities, functionality, forget things that are a thing of the past at the same time. You got to, at some point, say this is the stable solution. So we're getting pretty close to that, but we want to make sure that we have ability to mature long term. So it's a balancing act. You don't want to be complacent at all, but you do need to at some point say we've done enough and we need to do what we're doing and say this is the best practice and we're going to do this across the organization. We're going to do it for 2 or 3 years and make small tweaks instead of kind of the bigger adjustments that we've made to process in the last, I would say, year plus. Yeah,
it's always hard, right? Because you always want the new toy. You want to go broad. You want to do something and test something and try something, but you have to, like you said, it's a great point, is especially for the larger organization. You have to go deep. At some point, you have to make the decision to go deep instead of broad, and then you can restart on that journey. That's awesome. I was curious, Josh, you have a unique business model. You and a couple of other, industries are similar, where you have the company-owned stores and you have sort of the independents, right? And you have this difficult sort of challenge of influencing these different sort of customers, let's call them different types of customers, through best practice, standardization, and then also what's right for your end customers, right? You're kind of pushing and pulling at the same time through these multiple channels. Describe a little bit about, some of the successes you've had, some of the challenges in that space, and, in that complexity of living in the world like that as a pricer, because I think that's a unique journey that some people can relate to, but others, they would be curious to understand.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of where I came out of in the organization. So I've been doing pricing for 10 years. I was first doing pricing with our independent owners, so trying to help them understand what best practices look like. And eventually we grew that to more of a nationwide approach, put a division lead, those pricing focused and helping independent owners kind of drive best pricing practices. I'd say that was probably the number one thing that helped us drive adoption of our recommendations. But it was more of a trying to optimize profit at the store level. So it's a very interesting balancing act that we play in this role of we're trying to help them understand what best practice looks like, how to optimize their margin expectations. Obviously, they're a channel partner to us, so that that could be counterproductive if they're trying to go to optimize price and not optimize sales. So we've got to balance that over time, but our mentality has always been a healthy independent owner is a good partner for us. So if they're financially, they're making the right profit, that means they've got dollars to reinvest in the business. So we've taken that stance in our organization, and we've had that kind of consulting wing in different levels of maturity for 10 years in the organization. And then, what we do today is we're trying to add some clarity into what good looks like and make it relevant to their market. The benefits of having an independent owner in a specific market is they're going to get really tight to what's happening at the street, at the competitive level, the needs of their customers that maybe you don't get if you're a company-owned location. So the question is how do we help them understand how data can still make that decision even better? Don't overemphasize what you're hearing from an account and apply that same discount to all of your customers. Don't think that you heard a SKU level problem and it's a line level problem, because those are the kind of things that can erode margin fast. Is you hear noise and you kind of explode what you think the scope is. And I'd say that's very commonly done. I'd say in most organizations, right? You hear a little noise and you think it's the whole world that's doing this. So that's what we're trying to work on right now is, okay, what do they need to know? They want stuff that is relevant to their market. That's typically by region or suburban versus urban versus rural markets. They want a primary discounting function that has been in this space for a long time is just volume of the account. Biggest accounts get the best prices. I think there's some fairness in that. So we're trying to build out some reporting to add some transparency there, and just keep on helping them understand what good pricing looks like, and then help them balance their profitability. You got to do both. Everybody wants to grow. We need them to grow so that we can bring on new tools and capabilities and help win market share across the country. So it's a good relationship that we have that we're always trying to strengthen.
That's great. How do you decipher, I think you were talking about it a little bit, between, market-driven pricing, where you understand the market. Some of our clients, they peg their pricing to, indexes, CPI, PPI, whatever it might be. Do you use any kind of strategy to understand the demand at the end customer level? And then do you use that in any kind of modeling that you do for your stores that are out there, be it independent or company owned?
Yeah, I'd say the one thing that is nice in our industry is basically all of our primary competitors and ourselves, we all share our sales and unit data with a third party aggregator. So what we get back from that is we're able to monitor our market share position, not at necessarily the granularity that you'd want. You know, you can't manage it at the SKU level, but you can see at the product level and region level whether or not we're winning or losing market share. So that's a huge thing for us. I would say we're still trying to figure out what the exact correlation, what does that mean for price? Because price is still not the number one or number two reason that a purchase is made. So we've done some rather large projects where we've made strategic pricing moves with an eye on that data. And in general, we don't show a whole lot of elasticity. If you don't fix your service, you don't fix your availability, price at the end of the day, you can move it up or down, but you're not going to win that sale. So it's definitely been a learning journey of how do we use some of this data, some of this new to us data to help make a decision. I'd say we use it right now as a reference point more than I use it to physically build into a model.
Got it. How about inventory in the channel? So if you use an aggregator for your market share changes, do you use the aggregator to understand inventory at a community level?
We, to my knowledge, do not. You used to be able to like web scrape your competition to understand a little bit about their inventory position. Anymore, basically us and all of our competitors show different types of availability because we are all in most markets, we have multiple locations and they can trade with each other. And so there's been this like enrichment of always show it as available, even if it's not available at right now. Yeah. So there's been some interesting things that have happened to just the transparency of inventory availability. I'd say it's actually gone backwards. Everybody wants to make it look like they have everything available, even if it's not available at that location at that time. But yeah, I mean, for us, we want to be good stewards of our inventory. And so we've actually had some strategic alignments internally to help align our inventory planning team a little closer to our pricing team so that we can start building that bridge and making sure that we're keeping an eye on where do we have too much inventory, trying to make sure that influences a model potentially, maybe some inventory life cycle that could influence a model, but we're keeping an eye on making sure that we're generating as much as we can from the dollars that we have invested in inventory.
That's great,
Josh. That's interesting. It just resonates with me. I know we're talking about the independent owners right now, but Jeet, when we're working with, say, a platform company that a private equity company owns, and they're kind of adding different acquisitions onto it, ultimately to influence price for those new add-ons, there's often this advocacy case of like, hey, here's what good looks like. Here's the benchmarks of a similar deal situation and why it's been successful in other businesses or similar geographies, whether it's Josh, like your segmentation, urban, suburban, whatever it is, if you can prove that, hey, like this may feel like a change to you, but we've got other data that proves that it's worked successfully and it should work for you too. Like what's good for the goose should be good for the gander here, and you can improve your own bottom line by doing that. And that, I think that's a best practice that can work across different ownership structures, whether it's wholly owned subsidiary or an independent dealer.
Pete, I think one the thing that listening to Josh, it resonates with me more and more is I think there's an inherent value that we don't give much time to, which is the transparency piece. I think sellers accept price changes or any kind of changes, frankly, at the order level, if they have transparency and visibility to what's happening, why it's changing, what's the logic behind it. I think it makes it easier to accept. And I think Josh alluded to it a little bit earlier. And I think it's the same way for portcos, for our PE firms that we work with. I think if they understand what's happening, it's easier to accept. Not that they will, but it's easier to accept. And I think that's the first step. And I think there's a huge change management thing, which I know for portcos, they are scared that any change to my customer, especially if they're owner operated and they're sort of founder led, there's always this scare of, you change my offer in any way, shape, or form, all my customers will leave. There's this drastic sort of understanding of that. And so you have to kind of give them the security of, hey, look, this is a good thing to align your prices with value. Here's why. Here's the full transparency. And hopefully we'll be able to take you through the implementation process where you don't think that your entire customer base is going to disappear with one simple change to some part of your offer, right? But there are some analogies that are there from what Josh is talking about, because pricing is so emotional in nature.
Yeah. Josh, if you could sit down with yourself like 2-3 years ago and give yourself a heads up or ways to think about things, just in our last few minutes here, like what would you tell your younger self of what to think going into this whole thing? How would you help yourself out?
I'd say a little bit it's already been touched, like really have a firm vision of who you want to be when you grow up. I think that, we've been growing that vision, I would say, more than a clear light at the end of the tunnel that we were focused on. That would definitely help. Another thing was just when we were going through the whole effort, luckily somebody told me this and I took it to heart, but it was go live fast. Don't fight to perfection. Perfection is the enemy of progress. All of those kind of things are definitely key lessons learned throughout this. Set yourself up so that you can react quickly and correct anything and make sure that you have systems and capabilities to do that. But then go live, learn, advance quickly after that. But yeah, I'd say those are all kind of some of the big chunks.
Yeah. Move as fast as you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, Josh.
Thanks for joining us.
Of course. No, this was really fun.
Cool. Great to have you on, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
All right.
Get it. Thanks, Josh.